He came into the world in an age when the gods had fallen silent, a people tempered in the frost, hardened by hunger, and shaped by endless war. Their fate lay in the hands of a god who gave them strength only at birth and never returned, Crom. This is the tale of Conan, yet it is also the echo of real warriors marching toward us through the haze of forgotten centuries. On Robert E. Howard's map of the Hyborian Age, the Cimmerians' homeland lies hidden beneath a shroud of mist. But in history, the fog begins to lift. We know them as the Cimmerians. In the 8th century BC, they rode from the northern steppes of the Black Sea, their horses' hooves shaking the earth as they swept into Anatolia. In this documentary, we follow Conan's mythical path and measure it against the footprints of history. Every clash of swords, every shadowed cult, every journey you witness, what real age, what real people lie behind them. Step forward, and we begin. Conan was born in Cimmeria, at the far wind-swept edge of the Hyborian Age, a land of endless winters, jagged black cliffs, and winds that never rest. Here, life is a battle from the first breath. Survival means not only learning the sword, but enduring the cold, outlasting the hunger, and bending one's will against the merciless land. In our world, the Cimmerians, whom history calls the Cimmerii, were fierce nomads who thundered onto the stage of history in the 8th century BC. Masters of the bow on horseback, they swept south from the steppes north of the Black Sea, carving their path through the passes of the Caucasus and deep into the heart of Anatolia. They did not merely travel across the land, they struck like a storm, their arrival felt before it was seen. For them, the horse was not just a companion, it was the heart of war itself. With sudden, devastating raids, they could appear like a shadow on the horizon and vanish before their enemies could recover. The nomadic camps of these warriors bear striking resemblance to the fictional Cimmerian villages of Conan's world. In the films, Conan's birthplace is shown as a mountain village of stone walls and wooden huts nestled among snow and rock. But history paints another picture. Felt yurts with wooden frames, portable shelters that could vanish as quickly as they appeared. And in the mountain passes, fortified outposts where warriors kept eternal watch over the northern gates of the Caucasus. If Conan had walked among us, his home would have been one of these frontier strongholds, where the wind carried the scent of steel and the horizon was never trusted. In such a land, every soul born was destined for one of two fates: become a warrior or not live at all. Crom, the silent and merciless god of Conan's people, the Cimmerians. He has no temples, no towering altars in his name. He dwells high in the mist-shrouded mountains of Hyboria, far from mortal reach. He does not interfere in the lives of men. He offers no guidance, no mercy, no aid. His only gift, bestowed at the moment of birth, is strength, will, and the instinct to survive. To the Cimmerians, Crom stands above life and death itself, an untouchable power. To pray to him, to beg for his favor, is pointless. Crom does not hear the weak. Some say he even laughs at their fall. That is why Conan does not pray to Crom. He swears by him, and when he calls upon his name, it is most often in anger or defiance. Crom's distant, indifferent nature mirrors the beliefs of warrior societies across history. The nomads of the Central Asian steppes, the Norse raiders, the Celtic tribes, all learn to rely on their own strength rather than the whims of their gods. A god gives you your fate at birth. After that, the rest is yours to forge. Crom is the sharpest embodiment of this creed. Crom is not there to save you. He is there to make you strong at birth, and everything after that rests on the edge of your sword.
The faith in Crom is more than the worship of a god. It is the heartbeat of a way of life. His single command is absolute. Rely on your own strength. For a Cimmerian, life is a battlefield from the moment of birth. Weakness is death. Crom grants his warriors the raw power and courage they need to begin their journey, but what they do with those gifts, the honing, the mastery, the endurance, belongs to them alone. Throughout history, nomadic warrior peoples, like the Cimmerians of legend and the Cimmeri of our own world, lived by this same creed. Their gods never rode beside them in battle. Victory was forged not through divine favor, but through skill, endurance, and ruthless strategy. This is why Cimmerian children were trained from the earliest age to master the bow, the spear, and the sword. They learned to ride, to hunt, and to fight before they learned the comfort of rest. Hunger, cold, and exhaustion were not enemies, they were teachers. In Conan's life, this philosophy shapes every step. He does not wait for miracles. He knows that survival in battle depends on the speed of his sword and the force of his strike. The Creed of Crom says that your fate is written at birth, but the power to wield it is yours alone. A warrior of Crom does not plead for mercy nor search for excuses in defeat. There are only two endings: victory or the earth claiming your bones.
Though Crom is a completely fictional god, the belief systems that inspired him are real. When Robert E. Howard created Conan, he drew from Celtic myths, Norse sagas, and the faiths of the nomadic peoples of the Central Asian steppes. In these cultures, gods were rarely helpers. Instead, they embodied the harsh and unforgiving nature of life itself.
What we know about the real Cimmerians is limited, yet archaeological finds and ancient texts suggest they honored the sky, the stars, the mountains, and their ancestors. Mountains, in particular, were seen as sacred places, the dwelling places of the gods. This aligns closely with Crom's image as a figure who dwells upon the mountain peaks. In the Cimmerian view of the divine, a warrior's success depended entirely on his own will. Failure did not mean the god had abandoned you. It meant you had failed to use the strength you were given. Crom functions in exactly the same way. He grants you power at birth, but how you wield it is entirely your own choice. And so, Conan's god Crom stands as the reflection of both Hyboria's imagined warriors and the real barbarians of history. Silent, merciless, yet the one who, on the day of your birth, places your fate in your hands.
When Conan was still a boy, his village in the snow-covered hills of Cimmeria came under attack. The sky darkened with smoke, and the wind carried the scent of blood and ash. Enemy tribes burned the settlement to the ground, chaining the women and children. That day, Conan's life changed forever. The scream of his mother, the final look from his father, seared into his memory. In history, the real Cimmerians were both the raiders and the victims of such attacks. Among nomadic peoples, raids and plunder were the primary means of shifting the balance of power. When a village was taken, the survivors were often enslaved, sometimes held for ransom, sometimes sold in distant markets, and sometimes forcibly absorbed into other tribes. This moment in Conan's story reflects the brutal truth of Hyboria. Here, peace is nothing more than the stillness before the storm. You live with the knowledge that at any moment, a band of riders on the horizon could erase your home from existence. And so, Conan's life shifted in an instant, from the innocence of a child's games to the cold iron of chains. That was the day he lost his childhood and began the long journey of fighting to survive. Taken prisoner, Conan was sold into slavery. Still only a boy, he was tasked with turning a massive millstone alone. For years, 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, he walked in circles around the same stone. His muscles grew, his shoulders broadened, but in his mind there was only one thought: freedom. In the ancient world, slaves were used not only for domestic service, but for grueling physical labor. In the mines of Rome, chained slaves toiled endlessly. In Assyria and Babylon, fields were plowed by the hands of captives. In work that demanded strength, male children were often preferred, for they could labor for many years and over time be shaped into capable warriors.
Conan's endless years at the mill were, in truth, both a physical and spiritual training. With every turn of the stone, his anger grew within him. Fatigue did not weaken him, it hardened him. This is a truth seen in warrior cultures. Harsh conditions do not break the warrior's spirit, they sharpen it. Years later, when Conan broke his chains, he was not merely a free man. He had pushed beyond the limits of human endurance, becoming a weapon of flesh and bone.
Over time, Conan's strength and endurance caught the attention of his masters. They sent him to the arenas, the gladiator pits where men fought to the death. Here, Conan learned not only to survive, but to fight in a way that captivated those who watched. Throughout history, many slaves were forced into the life of a gladiator. Spartacus, one of the Roman Empire's most famous fighters, was a Thracian slave. In Assyria and Egypt, captives were trained in combat to fight in arenas for their masters. These battles were more than entertainment. They were displays of power, staged to prove a ruler's dominance before the crowd. Conan survived hundreds of matches in the gladiator pits. Each duel made him faster, deadlier. In the eyes of his opponents, he was no longer just another slave. He was the Cimmerian, a warrior whose name was spoken with fear. And then, one day, the chains were gone. Conan was free. But his freedom would lead him down bloodier roads still.
After years living in the shadow of chains, Conan was finally free. But freedom is more than the breaking of iron. It carries the risk of hunger, the threat of enemies at every turn, and the constant struggle to survive. In history, a warrior freed from slavery did not simply join an army overnight. First, he had to find his place. For nomadic fighters like the Cimmerians, freedom meant constant movement and the pursuit of spoils.
Many former warriors turned to mercenary work, guarded caravans, or joined raiding bands once they were released. In his first days of freedom, Conan moved through the city like a hunter, studying his surroundings. He learned to see who was strong, who was weak. To know who fears and who can fight is the first rule of freedom.
The moment the chains fell, it was as if Conan had been born a second time. But in Hyboria, freedom did not mean safety. Every man who escaped his bonds would face hunger, cold, or a new enemy before the next dawn. Conan learned this truth quickly. Walking through the outskirts of the city, he carried only a simple sword on his shoulder and the weight of years on his back. Yet in his eyes burned a light that slavery had not extinguished, the will to survive. In history, warriors freed from bondage did not immediately join great armies. They first had to forge a new identity and choose a new path. For nomadic peoples like the Cimmerians, freedom meant constant movement and the pursuit of plunder. That day, as Conan walked the stone streets, he studied everything around him, the fear or arrogance in people's faces, the hum of trade, the salt-heavy scent drifting from the harbors. The chains were gone, but he understood that survival would demand not only strength, but a sharp mind.
In the city's market square, Conan came across a band of mercenaries recruiting fighters. These groups were hired by city-states or wealthy merchants, sometimes to guard border villages, sometimes to escort caravans. For Conan, this was a chance to earn both coin and experience. In reality, the Cimmerians also served as mercenaries. Assyrian inscriptions speak of Cimmerian warriors serving in northern campaigns. They were effective in both attack and defense, but their loyalty was tied to gold and the promise of plunder. His first assignment was to protect border villages near the edge of the forest from bandits. Along the road, he pulled his rain-soaked cloak tight and kept his sword clean. Conan knew this was more than a job for coin. It was the first step toward carving his name into the field of battle.
Cimmerian warriors wore light armor and moved with speed. Mounted archery, set in raids, and wearing down the enemy were their specialties. Against heavy armies, they relied on swift strikes followed by rapid retreats. Conan's fighting style mirrors these tactics. As seen in the films, he never lingers needlessly in defense. He always seeks the opening to strike. His agility is as much a weapon as his strength. He quickly saw the advantage of this style on his first missions. The enemy faltered under Conan's fierce yet sudden attacks. By combining the swiftness of steppe warriors with the disciplined but slower movements of city-trained soldiers, he forged a deadly technique that was entirely his own.
Conan won his first battle, but the price of victory was steep. Beside him, a young warrior fell to the enemy's spear. That day, Conan learned that war was not only glory, it was loss. For the Cimmerians, no battle came without loss. Even their greatest victories often became the graves of their finest warriors. This is why their victory rites were both celebrations and funerals. The young warrior's death was burned into Conan's memory. The thrill of triumph lasted only hours, but the weight of that loss stayed on his shoulders for days. From that day forward, he entered every battle prepared to face both death and victory.
After his first missions, Conan's name began to spread. For some, the word Cimmerian meant safety. For others, it meant fear. Those who saw him were struck by the hard set of his face and the cold fire in his eyes. In history,
A warrior's reputation was his greatest weapon. For the Cimmerians, making the enemy fear you was half the battle won. Reputation was not only the reward for past victories, it was the key to those yet to come. Conan's name was whispered along caravan roads and in the dim corners of taverns. Some sought to hire him, while others made a point to avoid him. Reputation was an invisible armor, one that could protect you from enemies and choose your allies for you.
After gaining his freedom, Conan understood one truth. In this world, there was no peace. Peace was only the brief pause before the next war. You were either the hunter or the prey. The Cimmerians lived the same fate. Their lives were defined by constant movement, endless conflict, and unbroken struggle. Conan embraced this truth. On his journeys, he was never without a weapon, not for a single day. Even when sleeping in his tent at night, he kept his sword within arm's reach. Because in Hyboria, if war did not find you, you had to find it.